right, and here is part 2. I told you it wasn't going to be too far along, and it wasn't. All right, so we are going to compare the JH24 2-inch tape machine to the Burls. Nothing has changed. No microphone placement, no amp setting. The guitars were the same. Everything was as close as possible. I did not change anything. Both recorded tracks are on the same tracks in Pro Tools. So if I put a plugin on the kick drum, it's for both. Same with the snare, same with the guitars. And I hardly use any plugins. I just cut some low end out here, and that's about it. I basically did some high passing. Now the reverb you hear on the guitars is the pedal that you will see when I'm showing you the signal chains. The only thing I could think of that isn't fair is the fact that you're not hearing the JH24 in the room because it is being transferred through the Burls into the computer so you could hear it. So that's not very fair as far as the JH24. But hey, what are we going to do? You got to be able to eventually hear the analog tape tracks, so you got to make them digital. Here we go. All right, let's start with the drums. Everything was recorded the same way, and I pretty much did everything in one take because I want to get this done all in one day to put it up for you guys to see. All right? So, Tama Art Star 2, we'll start with the kick drum. I got 2 mics on the kick drum. Inside the kick, about halfway, if you could see, I don't know if you can, there it is. I have a Yamaha MZ204. Outside the kick, I have a Neumann FET 47 from 1974. For the snare drum, I have a Black Beauty, and it is mic'd with a Shure SM57 on the top and a Shure SM57 on the bottom, phase correct. This is a Black Beauty, and I am using a fat skin right here. And I also have a Skytone Remo head on there, which is pretty cool. Sounds very fat and warm. On the hi-hat, I have another 1974 Neumann KM84. The toms, I have Sennheiser 421s. And then stereo overheads is Mojave MA300s. And then the mono room which is the 10th mic, is a U47 clone, a Flea 47. That's a tube microphone, and my overheads are tube microphones, so they require power supplies. There's the power supply for the U47, and there's the power supplies for the Mojave MA300s. So there is 10 microphones on this kit. I did not change the mics at all. The same way they were tracked to the 2-inch tape is the same way they were tracked to the Burls. So over here, I'll show you real quick. I have a video that I'm going to post coming up where I'm comparing these vintage AKG D190Es that you could get very cheap next to Shure SM57s, and you will be surprised. I just got both of these microphones today. I actually traded a couple little mic stands for them, so I thought I got a steal deal on them, and they're mint condition in their cases, but you can get those cheap, and you'll see my video where I compare them to Shure SM57s. Here we have a U87 not in use, so let's go through and see the other signal chains. So the only guitar used is this 1978 Les Paul Special that went into a Marshall JMP from 1978. It has EL34s, it has 50 watts. Reverb you hear on the guitars, this is it. This is a great pedal. I'll probably do a video on it. I love the way it sounds, and it doesn't change the amp. It just adds natural reverb. It'll be very hard to find these because they're not really out right now, and they are expensive. I got this from a famous guitar player that he was given 2 of these, 2 of their fuzzes and 2 of their comps, and he kept 1. He's a great guitar player, and I appreciate him passing this along. So this is going through into a cab that is loaded with G12M 25-watt blackbacks, which is one of my favorite speakers ever, and it is mic'd with a Royer R121 and a Shure SM57. The bass guitar was my Yamaha BB300. Amazing, amazing bass. Got that for $67. That was DI'd into a J48 into an old API 312. Every mic pre-used was an old API 312. So the 10 mics on the drums were 10 API 312s right here. The guitars, the Royer R121 and SM57, is this stereo pair of 312s. And then the bass was this 312. And that is pretty much it for signal chains. I am not using any outboard gear except for I do have some mix bus compression and EQ, which I always have. This goes without saying. If you're hearing tracks off my board, which they're all off my board, I always have my Allen Smart and X filter on the mix bus because I love what it does. Besides that, I'm not using the outboard except for the drum bus. I have lightly dialed in parallel the API 2500. And that is for both set of tracks, the tape tracks and the Burl tracks. Other than that, I just have some plugins and a little bit of EQ on the board. But there's no difference between the Burl tracks and the tape tracks. They are going through the same channels, the same tracks. So if I have a plugin on a snare track, it's for both the JH24 and the Burl. So there is no difference there. So that is the signal chains, my friends.